everyone. Welcome back to the Summit View podcast. My name's Scott Schwitzer. I'm the Director of Wealth Management here at Peak American Investment Advisors. And today I'll be sitting with one of our senior wealth advisors, John Congdon. So welcome, John.
Hey, Scott. Good to be here, man.
Yeah. Well, John, I really just want to talk to you a little bit today about your time in the industry, what you've seen, and how you really approach planning.
Yeah.
So maybe start by telling us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. So like Scott said, I'm a senior wealth advisor here, and basically that's our code word here at Peak to mean that I've been doing this for a really long time at this point in time. I'm coming up on my 10th year here at Peak American, my 11th year in the industry. And it didn't all come together right in the beginning. I mean, it started off with driving a beat up Buick Lucerne across 3 different states in the Midwest, right?
Okay.
And I know you come from New Jersey and can recognize how snowy it is up there. So it was a tough start, but those years taught me the importance of planning. And when we say planning, we're talking about the decisions that our clients, all of you, are going to be making on your own, ideally with the help of a guide. And I learned that planning has to come first before investment performance. Now, again, I hope that's not misinterpreted to mean that investment performance is not important, that things like sequencing of returns are not important. They are very important. But the decisions you make, such as, do I have estate planning documents in place, right? What happens when I pass? And hopefully before I pass, right, where is my fixed income coming from? Do I know what my Social Security is going to look like? Do I know when to do that? Do I know if I have a pension or not? Now that I've established this, how much do I need from my portfolio? Is that going to last? And what is that as a function of a percentage of my net worth? And if we get all of those things figured out, oh my goodness, is it a lot less stressful? Right?
Well, John, that sounds like a lot of different factors that you have to look at when putting together a plan for a client.
It is.
How has that changed over the years that you've been doing this? You've been with us now 10 years. How is technology? How has everything just changed to make that maybe not easier for you, but more efficient?
Yeah, and I think it's become a little bit easier to piggyback off of that, but when I first was driving across 3 states in my beat-up Buick, what had happened is we were doing all of our work. I kid you not, I would carry 2 packets of paper with me in this briefcase that my wife had left over from college. And we would do all of our calculations, all of our data gathering by hand on paper with maybe the help of a financial calculator, your HP 10 BI2 plus, something like that, whichever one you like. And so I'm doing all of this by hand. And I couldn't tell you, Scott, how much time I spent just gathering data, just dealing with numbers. And I spent very little time talking with my clients who were counting on me to show up and say, "Hey, John, when do I start taking money out of my accounts? I want to retire at 63. Is that appropriate for me, or should I be working a little bit longer?" Or instead, they got to stare at me doing a whole bunch of calculations. So, of course, as time went on, good financial planning software became more available. We were outfitted quite properly with the right kind of computing technology. And, my father would always say that technology is both a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
It works when it works, right? And sometimes the old-fashioned way is helpful, but the more time I can spend having a conversation, maybe kind of like we're doing right now, as opposed to this plus this.
Data gathering.
Exactly, right. Data gathering and analysis, the better. In fact, I was reading an article the other day, or reading a post, I should say, and it really struck home with me because I've had some people ask me, "Well, John, I'm paying you a fee. And it's not my cheapest line item, to say the least. But you told me you can do a financial plan in about 30 to 45 minutes. And I'll tell people, from what I read on this post, this isn't my hourly rate or anything like this. It's because I can do it in 30 to 45 minutes. But to do it in 30 to 45 minutes, I need my tools, just like a auto mechanic is going to need his or her tool chest to fix a car properly. So too must I be equipped with good financial planning software, good tax software, et cetera, et cetera.
And one of the things too to point out, although the time may have been cut down to put together that initial plan, that's not where the plan stops, right?
No.
So maybe elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, I will. It would be almost. It would be quite interesting if we just, do our, learn somebody's story, of course, and then take their information, do some analysis, prepare recommendations like we always do, and then just stop there. Yep, here's your recommendations. It does not stop there. There's a 7-step process that the CFP board is big on using, and I try to replicate that as much as I can in my practice. Of course, half the battle is just understanding, and I know you talk about this a lot, the cognitive biases that we face. Because in a perfect world, I would hand somebody a recommendation, they would implement it, and we would just give them a little minor course correction here and there. Usually that's not happening.
It's not the way life works.
No, it's not the way life works. In fact, I'll have a lot of people come back for their quarterly or sometimes their semi-annual, even for some select people, their annual reviews. And we'll have to do some major course corrections. Hey, John, you wouldn't believe it, but we're going through a divorce right now. Or, you wouldn't believe it, but I lost one of my kids here. And these sometimes aren't fun course corrections, but that definitely means we're going to need to change something. Or, hey, John, that side hustle that I was talking about, that side job that I wanted to do in retirement that we were counting on, I mean, that's not going to really work out anymore because my health's starting to go. And whoa, maybe now we can't be playing it as aggressive as we used to be playing it. Maybe now we need to cut back on certain withdrawals. Maybe now, hey, on the positive side of things, maybe now that gives us more of a window of opportunity for tax planning. A lot of times people start doing things like Roth conversions or reordering their withdrawals at that point in their life.
It sounds like you take a much more intentional approach to financial planning and wealth management for your clients than, say, the big box cookie cutter model where every 65-year-old or every 75-year-old in a similar situation is going to get a similar portfolio.
Sure.
It sounds like that's not the case when they work with you.
I couldn't agree more, Scott. In fact, me and my wife even have gone into a couple of the big box places just out of curiosity. And in addition, I've, of course, worked with thousands of people who have visited the big box thing. And the one thing that they tell me or ask me is they say, hey, John, I know you had me fill out a little bit of paperwork in the reception area. Where's the risk tolerance questionnaire? Why don't I have to fill out one of those? And I tell them quite candidly, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
That doesn't really matter. Well, John, why doesn't it matter? Well, it matters to an extent, but it's out of context. What I don't yet know, I'll tell somebody, is what I don't yet know is I don't yet know if you're going to even need any money off of this portfolio to begin with. I have no idea if leaving something behind is important to you. I don't know what fixed income is available. So at that point in the planning process, I am not yet equipped to determine how somebody should be investing their money. A lot of times people come into an appointment and for the first time, they say, John, what should I be investing in? And I would even parallel that question to going to see your doctor and saying, hey, doctor, what's a good medicine for me to take? Well, I don't know. What are you coming to see me for? Right?
So maybe could you walk us through a little bit so our viewers maybe get a glimpse in what is a first appointment, initial consultation?
Yeah.
Someone wants to come and talk to you. What does that look like?
That's a great question, Scott. It would almost feel kind of like this conversation that we're having right now. And Scott, what I mean by that is that, yes, you are going to sit in our reception area. We've got a great coffee machine that maybe I make a little bit too liberal use of. And the They'll sit down. We're going to just grab a little bit of basic information. But when you're in my office, when we call you back to be seen, it's going to feel a lot like this. What's important for me to figure out, Scott, is who they are as a person. What's important to them? Is family important to them? Do they have any hobbies that they really enjoy doing? Do they want to travel the world, or have they seen it all and they just want to keep it really simple? Some people even just say, John, I just been working my whole life and I just want to sit down and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, well, that might change, but we'll
Yeah.
see, right? So we talk a lot about things that are important, our goals, our dreams, all that good stuff. And we don't even really start talking about, when we're retiring, when we're doing this, when we're doing that, how we should be investing money until generally a second or a third appointment.
Okay.
Because I don't have that context just yet. I haven't developed really anything. So I think the point that I'm making is that during those initial consultations, it's conversational, it's educational. It's not about products, it's not about investment vehicles. Yeah, those are important conversations, but we need that context, that planning context before we can start diving into, what we really want to get figured out, the nitty-gritty decisions that we need to be making.
So it sounds like you want to take the time to get to know each individual couple or each individual that's sitting with you, understand truly where they are right now, where they want to go, if there's important milestones along the way. We want to uncover all of this
That's
first
right.
before we start to put together a financial plan and before we start to recommend certain types of investments. Is that correct?
That's right, Scott. It would be, my goodness, I hope somebody would not walk out of my office if they sat down and I said, hey, here's a really good portfolio with American funds or Invesco. Nothing wrong with American funds or Invesco, by the way. Fine companies, but that's way too premature in the process. I would hate to put that in place and then have somebody come back in maybe a couple of years and have all of that go through probate because they didn't have an estate plan in place, or have to withdraw all of that too early because they didn't understand where their fixed income was coming from. They didn't immunize their portfolio properly. They didn't take an insurance or bond immunization approach on this, right? So as such, it might be tempting to get a quick answer from a financial planner, but you have to understand that this is very much a marathon. It is absolutely not a sprint.
Why do you think a lot of the big box firms that are out there, a lot of the wirehouses,
Yeah.
lead with products and lead with solutions right off the bat before they spend the time to get to know the folks that they're sitting across the desk from?
Well, and there's a couple of schools of thought on this. Scott, I'm led to believe, and again, this is not me ripping on any of these companies. I'm sure that they may be good fits for some people, and I think a lot of the big boxes are good fits for do-it-yourselfers who just maybe want a little bit of support here along the way, and B, just for people who want a product, right? You just want a mutual fund, you just want an insurance product, you just want a portfolio, right? And if that is you, if you're listening to this today and that's how you're thinking, I want to boldly challenge that thinking for just a second. It's so tempting to just have something in place, just to have a product in place that's making you money. I cannot tell you, Scott, how many plans ended up changing. This is a perfect example here. How many plans ended up changing when I was in this industry back in 2020? Give you a little bit of context, Scott. At the time, I was working I was in Los Angeles, California. The COVID pandemic had begun. And, this is not a political statement, but I'll tell you what, Los Angeles locked that city down. You couldn't go anywhere. You had to carry papers with you to drive on the freeways, or, you could be fined, maybe even jailed in some cases. So it was quite a big lockdown. But, I'll tell you what, when I was still going out to see people as a covered individual, an exempt individual under the COVID laws, I couldn't tell you how many people would say, John, I lost $200,000. I lost $300,000. I lost $500,000.
Mhm.
How did this happen? I wasn't ready for anything like this. I
Mhm.
was not ready for anything like this. Okay, well, I mean, it's a big hit. I mean, how is that going to affect you? Well, John, I don't know where my paychecks are going to come from anymore.
Mhm.
I mean, I think I can still take a paycheck, but I think it's going to have to be smaller. I mean, what do I do here? We had to stop, and I know you're the behavioral finance guy, of course, Scott. We had to stop a lot of people. We talk about loss aversion so
Mhm.
much. We had to stop a lot of people from making some scary and maybe even just some downright dumb decisions at that point.
Mhm.
In fact, I'm sure you've read, Dr. Carrie Johnson's "Why Smart People Make Dumb Mistakes with Their Money." By the way, if you're watching, I hope that you download this book or purchase this book. No one's paying me to say this, but I think it's just a great read
Mhm.
on. What to do in these kind of situations. But, Scott, to directly answer your question, had these people, I mean, these were all first time people, had these people had a plan in place, had they been ready for this kind of volatility, especially since they were living off this money, most of them
Mhm.
were, it would have been a lot less scary. Yeah, it
And
was
and
scary.
and that's a huge advantage to working with someone like
Oh,
yourself
yeah.
is it's not just here's your mix of investments, here's your products that we're using to invest your money.
Right.
It's here's your plan that we're going to get you from point A to point B with all these different milestones along the way. But we're also planning, we know the market just doesn't go straight up,
No,
right?
not at all.
There's going to be times where we see a 20% drop or a 30 or a
Yeah,
40% drop in the market.
that's right.
And if you just have a investment portfolio without a plan, you're leaving a pretty big blind spot, pretty big gap
Hmm.
in your overall future, right?
That's so true.
And that's where the planning really comes in to plan for what happens if we go through a huge downturn. Where's your income coming from,
Hmm.
right?
That's right. Scott, just recently I had worked with a couple who, it was a big life change because this couple had just retired, had just stopped working, and number one, they were getting used to that lifestyle. But number two, they were adjusting to the way that they need to invest to optimize a
Mhm.
sequence of return. What I mean is they went a fair amount more conservative. And, for context, this was where the Fed was beginning to drop rates. So it
Okay.
was a little bit more optimal to have a higher percentage in, mid to longer duration fixed income
Hmm.
at that point. Now, to these particular folks, this was anything but exciting.
Hmm.
Oh boy, fixed income, right? And we made the switch. And you, of course, remember, many of our viewers remember what had happened this last year in April, right, in 2025.
Hmm.
April, we faced, as the Liberation Day tariffs were rolled out, we faced a little correction
Hmm.
in the equity market.
Yeah.
And I got to call these people when they called in. They're watching their portfolio. That's great. Maybe they're watching it too much. I don't know. But they call in and they say, "Hey John, am I okay?" And I said, "Well, the S&P is down 13%. You're down 1%."
Hmm.
They're like, "Wow. Okay, I guess I don't need to be calling you panicking, do I?"
Hmm.
Said, "Well, I don't necessarily think you need to be calling panicking. It'd be a good time to review your plan, on the
Hmm.
other hand." And I'm so glad that we had that next meeting because a few months later, when everything was starting to go in the right direction,
Hmm.
equity wise, they called and said, "Hey, John, why am I not, 80 to 100% in stocks at this point in time, So at that point, they start chasing gains, right? They
Hmm.
start, it's a little bit of greed, right?
Hmm.
And again, nothing's wrong with wanting to make money. I think that's an important thing to, protect against inflation, but we got to keep the right psychology.
Hmm.
And to your point, a couple of episodes ago, Scott, you were talking about how sometimes we as planners have to save people from making emotional decisions. This was one of those times. I had to remind them. I said, "Guys, if we go 100% stock, yeah, you're going to like the returns a lot better. But what does it matter?" April would have been a totally different conversation. I would have said, "Guys, you're down 15%. That's going to be hard to recover from." I would have said something like this too. "Hey, you're taking about 2,000 a month off of this portfolio. golly, I hope we don't have a 20 or a 30% drop, because that's not going to happen anymore. Well, it might happen. They have enough scale,
Mhm.
but they're going to start diving into their principal. Now we run into maybe a good 30, 40, 50% chance that they run out of money before they run out of breath.
Mhm.
And they're not, and you know this just as well as I do, that these aren't the most fun conversations to have. They can be a little tense sometimes, maybe even a little awkward, but they're important conversations so that we don't end up making dumb mistakes with our money.
Yeah, and I often say to folks, one of the biggest values a client will gain from working with an advisor
Mm,
is almost that calming sense of the room when uncertainty spikes and they're unsure about what to do. When left to our own vices, we're all the same.
that's
Humans
right.
are wired the same way.
That's right.
And so when we get into that fight or flight mode, we think as natural protectors, what do we have to do to stop this?
Mhm.
We have to do something.
Right.
We have to change something. Oftentimes, that's not the case. And that's where a true advisor comes in and says, hey, this is what we're seeing right now, but don't worry, we planned for this. This is not new,
Mhm.
right? We built this into the
That's
plan.
right,
We
Scott.
understand what's going to happen. And if we can stop folks from making just one bad decision in their portfolio over the course of their life, we've earned our fee for generations to come.
Oh, sure.
If we could save you a $500,000 mistake, that's where our value comes in. And real quick before we
Yeah.
end here today, you know, you talked about folks that will go to a big box firm. They want a portfolio, they want a strategy.
Right.
They're often chasing performance.
Hmm.
What does this fund give me? Or what is the history of this portfolio?
Yes.
What are the average returns? Where do you find the disconnect in folks that are strictly chasing performance versus those that understand performance, like you said,
Yeah.
is important,
Yeah.
but also having a plan is much more paramount to performance?
That's a good differentiation to make, and I think there are people out there that can chase
Mhm.
performance. It does exist, but I think it becomes a lot less important, especially as somebody has scale,
Mhm.
right? And not too long ago is another perfect example. I have somebody I've been working with for a couple of years who is absolutely chasing performance,
Mhm.
but they have the ability to do so, right? They're not going to need their access to their portfolio for over 15 years at this
Mhm.
point. Still working very hard, still saving quite diligently. So we had to make that determination first and foremost. In fact, I started this couple out on a little bit more of a conservative plan, because
Mhm.
they wanted to have a plan in place. They weren't sure when they were going to retire. This year, we got information from these folks. They said, John, I love what I do. My contract is extended here. I think this is really a permanent placement now. They're working with a large payment processing
Mhm.
firm that I'm sure you're familiar with, and with that in place, we said, okay, you know what? You do have the scale, but you can now afford to chase some returns at this point.
Mhm.
Notice that none of this came from them saying, John, I want to take more risk, or John, I want more equity exposure. Here, let me refill out this risk tolerance questionnaire and have you plug it in
Mhm.
for me, please. None of that happened.
Mhm.
What did happen, though, is we said, here's your cash flow report. Here's what you're saving each and every year. Good job. Keep at that. Here's when we believe you're going to need to take some money out of your portfolio. And we project that
Mhm.
it'll be this much. Again, the further we go out, it's like the weather forecast gets
Mhm.
less accurate,
Yeah.
but we still have got a pretty good
Mhm.
idea. And since there's now that longer time horizon, okay, now you can afford to do this if you want to. Then we marry that with what's going on in the world today. For example, a lot of analysts are calling for kind of a more boring equity return, but a consistent equity return, and proving it might be a little bit more difficult to make money in fixed income unless we go longer duration.
Mhm.
So with that, I gave them this advice. I said, let's go ahead and increase your equity exposure so I can make you some money here.
Mhm.
But we still have to keep something over here hedged on the side just in case we're wrong, right?
Mhm.
We always have to have a if we're wrong plan. But none of this came from their preferences. It all came from situational awareness and planning, Scott.
Yeah. And so it sounds like if we set up a plan correctly, we know here's the money that is going to provide you and
Right.
your spouse or you and your family income throughout retirement to reach all your goals. If we have that covered, then yeah, maybe we could look to adjust a portion of the portfolio for maybe some more longer term growth prospects where
Yeah.
we're not going to be touching that for income.
Yeah. Yeah. Not, ideally not, right?
Yeah.
I would think so.
And I always say to folks, some folks out there listening that are my clients have probably heard me say this before, but the most important thing is understanding what your plan needs to return on an annual basis in order for you to reach your goals,
That's right.
right? In some situations, some folks may only need 6 or 7% annualized return. Um, I can guarantee you though, no one's going to be there, on their final day and at their funeral, and their spouse gets up there and says, well, John, he was such a great husband, and he beat the S&P 500 by 1% every single year, right? No, they're going to talk about all the good things that you all did over your course of your life, the things that you provide for your family for, and that's where the true planning comes in, not by marginally beating out an index.
That's absolutely true, right? What is the legacy that I'm leaving behind? And remember, as we all talk about, legacy doesn't necessarily mean dollars.
Mm.
From the amount of people I've spoken with, I would argue the number one fear that people share with me is directly or indirectly, they're going to share with me, how am I going to be remembered as a person?
Mm.
How am I, what did I leave behind? And again, that very rarely has to do with dollars. It's, did I, what was I a good person? Was I generous in the time that I had? Was I great to my children? Was I great to my grandchildren? Did I raise them the right way? How is my family going to remember me? But again, to your point, no one's going to say, "Oh, well, he beat the S&P by 2% every year." No one cares,
Yep.
right? Yeah, that's important, but again, we want to be remembered. All of us want to be remembered, and it's been a blessing over these years to help people leave behind not just a financial legacy, but to help guide them to be the kind of people they want to be and make sure that they have the resources to be able to do so.
John, that's amazing.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Scott Schweitzer. Again, thank you for joining us on the Summit View podcast, and tune in next week for another great episode. Thank you.